Welcome to Waiting on the Trade, a monthly comics book club for people who can't keep up with monthly comics. I'm Matt, there's always a way, Ledger.
And I'm Patrick, we're all we've got, Fitzgerald Fleck.
This month, we're talking about Grant Morrison, Frank Quitely, and Jamie Grant's All-Star Superman from DC Comics. Now, in case you didn't know, Pat, All-Star Superman is a story in which Lex Luthor poisons Superman by forcing him to fly too close to the sun, which I just got is like super Icarus-y.
It is.
Superman races against the clock to perform a number of last super and not so super feats before he dies, and Superman rehabilitates the cutest injured baby Sun Eater you've ever seen.
You really like that Sun Eater.
The Sun Eater's so good. The Sun Eater's like one of my favorite parts of the story, actually.
That's funny.
Well, like, it's so, and this will lead into the larger discussion of the thing, like, it's so Superman for that, like, karma of a thing that he just does out of, like, the kindness of his heart. And he can, like, he's the only one who could do it because he's Superman to, like, pay off in good ways by the end of the story. So,
sure.
I don't know. And it's just, like, it's such a great thing. Like, it's basically, the other day, we picked up a possum that was injured and took it to be rehabilitated. It's like that, except it's an animal that eats suds.
Sure. Equally as vicious. Gotta watch out.
Yeah, you gotta watch out. All right. So where do we want to start, Pat? Do we want to start with high points or low points?
I guess high points, right?
Yeah. All right.
Because this is a good series.
It's a good series. Like, I was thinking about it when I was writing up my notes for it, and I read like volume 2, so basically the last 6 issues on Saturday, and I was kind of like depressed as hell before I started reading it.
Oh no.
Like, I was like, oh, like nothing's working out, just like having a bad week, and like thinking about a spiral of thoughts that I'd have every once in a while about like, oh, we're out in California, like, oh, blah, blah. Part of it brought on by the fact that like our friend Mike was like supposed to have his first kid this week, and it's like, oh, I can't be there. And it's like that sort of stuff, like those thoughts that kind of come to me every once in a while we're out here in California instead of Wisconsin. And I was like, oh, I gotta read this happy, uplifting Superman story, and I hope like this mood doesn't wreck it for me. Like, I hope that my depressed as hell mood is not more powerful than the uplifting power of All-Star Superman and All-Star Superman 1. So that was nice. Like, by the end of reading it, I was like in a much better mood again. So that was good.
Well, Matt, only the impossible isn't possible. So
only nothing is impossible.
I forgot the quote. Thank you for fixing it.
Come on, Pat. But like we talked about in the Zero episode why we chose this book specifically, and like that's part of why we chose this book specifically to me, is like this is the most superhero-y book that there is.
It's very uplifting, yeah.
It's not even that, it's just like it's one of the like biggest and most bombastic books that there are, and like it's also, depending on who you are, because I had a discussion with my wife about this because I had her read part of it, easy to get into. There's an argument against that's to be made, and I think you kind of had similar feelings about parts of it where it's like it maybe isn't as easy to get into as I think it is. But
sure, yeah, varying levels of Superman knowledge is required.
It's definitely one of the easier Grant Morrison books.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I'd say that the only other Grant Morrison that's probably easier to get into is his We 3.
I was thinking about it, and I thought maybe JLA is, actually.
See, I haven't read all that. So, but We 3 is like its own
read the first volume of JLA, though, right?
I don't remember it. I'm sorry.
You don't remember. I'm so good. How can you not? But yeah, We 3, I think, just because it's self-contained, is potentially easier to get into.
It's Homeward Bound meets RoboCop. I mean, what can go wrong? It's
That's
so
an
good.
Awesome spin for that, actually.
It's so good.
But this book is like 2 or 3 on the like Morrison approachability scale, and it's definitely like below your Final Crises and like the Filth and the Invisibles, which I've never even read the Invisibles, because that one even I'm just like, don't touch.
Yeah, I haven't even read those. The last 2 that you said, Filth. I have never heard of that before.
The Filth I was given as a gift, and it's good, but confusing as hell.
All right. Yeah, I know. The new X-Men series, We 3, JLA, and the Batman run are the only like Grant Morrisons that I'm really familiar with.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, All Star Superman comparatively is, it's not that hard, not that hard to get into.
It's relatively accessible.
Yeah.
Although we'll get into the reasons why it may or may not be. So
Yes.
how did you find it upon like this reread? Because we've both read it before. I think this is probably my fourth or fifth time reading it, most likely.
Yeah, it's probably my third time
Okay.
going through. Yeah, I mean, I've always enjoyed it, but this time, probably because we're doing this show, I tried to be more diligent about like tracking. Oh, what is this a reference to? And I, not being a big Superman fan, don't know all the references that are being made, so it made it a little more difficult for me. But I still enjoy the book regardless. But no, this time around I did some research and I found like the continuity that Grant Morrison weaved in that I didn't know before.
Yeah, so it's like a stealth continuation of a lot of Morrison stuff that's like woven into his JLA run and then like also continues throughout. There's like this whole weird like Morrison only continuity of DC books where you can like read his stuff in order and like see him setting up stuff that he pays off like from basically like JLA through to what Multiversity would have been like 2015, I think, something like that. So like the 90s to 2015 or so, like Grant Morrison's writing like essentially one big DC Comics story just in bits and pieces across multiple
Oh
titles.
dang.
Yeah, which is like super cool because you don't need to know any of it.
Yeah, no, like I say, the first two times I read this I had no idea. But yeah, this time I looked it up and the whole Superman squad and Cal Kent and Superman Prime, who's that gold one who shows up, all were part of DC 1 million.
Yeah, so when Kat, my wife, read chapter 6, which is the Pa Kent funeral one, which is probably like my second or third favorite chapter, I
Yeah, it's my
think.
second for sure.
Okay. I'm between chapter 5, chapter 6 and chapter 10. So those are the ones I think we're going to probably talk about the most.
Yeah, it's 5 and 6 for me. So
Okay. I really like 10 for a lot of reasons, but we'll get there. So
yeah.
so she's talking about the fact that like, oh, there are like two Clark Kents in this story. That's cool. I'm like, yeah, there are three Clark Kents in this story actually. Cuz there's past Clark, quote unquote present Clark, who were like watching through the whole story and comes back in time basically to fight the Chronivore and say goodbye to his dad.
Yeah, which is
And
really
then
touching.
there's Super Future Clark, which is also like a payoff for the fact that like if
He
you're
didn't
in the
actually
know,
die. Yeah.
yeah, you know he's not dying. Like you know he's not going to die because it's looped into this like meta story that Grant Morrison's been writing for the last 20 years where
Yeah.
Superman goes into the sun and then comes out and saves the
Supercharged.
universe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was a crazy, like, it's a really cool Easter egg for the people in the know, but doesn't really do anything like the story. Like, the story's just as good without it. But that
The
little
story
tidbit.
itself might actually be better without it because you don't know for a fact that he's not gonna die. But I think it's also I'm one of those people who like flips to the end of the book and reads the last 2 pages every time when it's like a novel.
Ugh.
So like knowing that he's not well, first off, it's a Superman comic. Like he's not gonna die for real. Let's be real.
DC's gonna kill off
Honest.
Superman. Just watch out.
But like knowing that it's looped into this continuity and that by issue 12, sure, maybe stuff is going to be different, but like Superman's not dead is kind of cool for me. Like
Sure.
I enjoy that.
Yeah. So yeah, this time around, diving into that kind of stuff is interesting.
Yeah, you got to learn about Solaris the Tyrant Son a little bit more.
Yeah, which was never really my biggest like favorite part of this. But
He
he's a
doesn't
thing.
really like do that much in this story, so I could definitely like
He's
upon
ominous.
well, like upon rereading it, like they mention him a few times before he shows up, but if he like he
I
doesn't
have friends in high
do that
places.
much. Yeah, like besides kill my like favorite character, the baby Sun Eater,
It's
like
true.
he kind of doesn't do much besides just make Superman super angry and sort of be like
Poisons the sun.
in a manga, where there's like always the lieutenant before the boss fight.
Right.
Solaris is the lieutenant before the boss fight.
Technically, I guess Superman was dying anyways, but he poisons the sun, which causes Superman to quote
Which
unquote
makes
sacrifice
Superman
himself.
do the stuff he does at the end, yeah.
Yeah.
So you said 6 is your favorite or second favorite chapter?
Yeah, 6 is my second favorite.
Okay. Which one's your favorite? Is it the Lex Luthor interview one?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's the best one.
Lex and Clark like playing off each other, and the fact that Lex is just showing off left and right to this who he thinks is this dumb country bumpkin who is actually Superman is
Yeah, and at
just
the same time, like Lex is showing off and like proving his superiority, and Clark is actually like outwitting him the entire time, but
yes.
feels no need to show him, which is so perfectly like it's so perfectly Clark. Like it's not even so perfectly Superman. Like it's so perfectly Clark, which is wonderful.
Yeah, he saves him from electrocuting himself. He like saves him from the riot that breaks out, and Lex has no idea, and he thinks he's the one saving Clark. It's
How
great.
many times did you have to go back and look at that panel where like Clark walks into Lex's cell and there's that like little jolt of electricity coming out of the wall that Frank Quitely draws?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like what? It's if you're in the two volumes that I have, it's like page 110 in like the second panel where there's just like this tiny little jolt of electricity in the outlet.
It's like Final
Which
Destination.
Yeah,
Yeah, gotta watch out.
I haven't. I think I saw Final Destination 2.
Yeah, it's not worth viewing, but it's in the popular culture lexicon, so you know the kids will get it. It's fine.
The kids. We're so hip on this
I'm
show.
not turning 30. Shut up.
We're all turning 30
Oh.
on this show this year, except Kat when she comes on next episode because she's already 30.
Oh
Positively ancient.
no.
I also liked that Kat liked that issue at least because that's the best issue I think. And if she didn't, we would have had to get divorced.
Lex is just so much fun in that issue. It's just great.
Yeah. Like, and I don't know, like he's not even. This isn't even my favorite version of Lex Luthor because my favorite version of Lex Luthor like is a little bit more nuanced to the point where he has a motivation that makes sense to me. Whereas this like Grant Morrison's Lex is a little bit more just like I hate Superman. If that makes sense.
I think I don't know, I consider him to be more Machiavellian, but the fact that his plan has already been like he's already executed his plan. Like we're at the end of it now.
Yeah, which is a cool bit.
He's just gloating.
Which we're not even at the end of it. We're at the part where like he's won, but he hasn't done the victory lap that he's going to do in issue 12,
Right.
basically.
Yeah, that whole thing. Yeah, I guess this time around I noticed the Robot 7 being.
I did too, actually. So one of the questions we'd written ourselves as a discussion point is like, what did you notice on this read that you didn't notice on your first? And like the Robot 7 stuff was definitely on my list of like you know that it's malfunctioned when it's talking to Lois in issue 2,
Right.
but you don't know exactly why, and that kind of comes through a little bit more, I think.
And it was Solaris that did it, right? That like somehow hacked into
I
that
think it
robot.
was Lex, actually.
Was it Lex? How did Lex get access to the robot?
He's Lex Luthor, I guess is how that happened.
He's inside the fortress of whatever. No, it's fine. It happened.
He's got Wi-Fi, man. He can turn a robot that spouts Moby Dick into a supersonic drill.
Oh my god! Literally bores into the earth is one of my
It's a
favorite
really good
lines.
line.
Oh, Herman Melville, I'm so sorry. You wrote
I have
some
not
dry
read that
literature.
book, actually. As an English major, that's one of my blind spots.
I've tried.
Yeah.
It's not. Moby
Not
Dick is
worth
it's my white whale, if you will.
Nice. Where does that baboon come from, by the way?
Right? I was asking you before we started. Is that a reference I'm not getting?
No, it's one of those things that just is weird. It's just weird. At least as far as I know. Here, we can Google Superman baboon quick and see if we don't
I feel
get
like a
weird
monkey
stuff.
in a Superman suit has to be in there somewhere, right? That has to be a thing that happened. Like maybe in the older films.
No, I got nothing. Nothing comes
All
up.
right. It's just Lex just laughing at Clark having to write this ridiculous thing.
Oh man, I really like how he just basically says like, "Hey, your paper tells the truth, but the truth is going to be so absurd that no one believes it."
And then I'm going to shake this bamboo's hand and I'm going to
Here's a
take you down
baboon in
the
a Superman
secret.
costume,
Yeah.
and here's my niece. And this like
Call her
dominating-
nasty. Like, what? Oh my god.
Oh my god! So like one of my favorite panels of the entire thing is when Lex
The
is
eyebrow?
like he's like standing there all cocky. Like it's basically that entire issue summed up in one panel, right? Is like Lex standing there all cocky, being like, "Yes, I've won," but his goddamn eyebrow doesn't match, and so he hasn't won.
No, it's so perfect. Like a little aside that he does when his niece tells him, Lex,
Cough,
eyebrow,
cough.
eyebrow, eyebrow. He just turns aside and like takes a pencil and draws it and looks back, which was a callback because I think earlier he mentioned something about 95% of males groom their eyebrows with the Superman swirl or something like that,
Yeah.
which I didn't quite get, but whatever that eyebrow payoff was worth.
I think he was talking about the eyebrow shape beauticians call the Superman swoosh.
Swoosh, yeah. So, like, did he burn off his eyebrow in the escape, or is that something that he just has?
Cat's pet theory is that he has alopecia in this continuity.
I mean, maybe.
So I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what happened. Like I know he like during the prison riot, he like wipes sweat from his brow and that's how he like wipes it off. So I think they're both drawn
He
on.
does have two eyebrows when he's like working out in front of Clark.
Yeah, so like during the riot he like wipes his brow and that
When he
gets rid of it. I
when
don't
he
know why he
stomps
doesn't have
on
them in the first place.
what is the supervillain's name? I just forgot.
Parasite?
Parasite, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a funny use of Parasite. Just like to set off a riot. That's all it
I
needs for.
did also love the punch out the big ugly ones first, Lex, my grandma used to say line.
Those Luthers, you gotta watch out.
Oh man. And like
The
Clark's so good at
shorthand
that.
comments are my best. Like, ugh. The fact that Lex Luthor doesn't understand what shorthand is perfect. It's something that Ma Kent taught Clark, and Lex doesn't understand it. Simmer down, because he gets like, oh, I can break any.
I'm the greatest criminal genius of our time. But do you
I can break any code in a minute. And time me, Lex. It's shorthand.
just like chill,
Simmer
bro.
down. It's
bro.
fine. And everybody's freaking out. Oh, no one stands in Luthor's way. Clark's like, yeah, I can't. That volume's too much for shorthand. Yeah, issue 5 is just, it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at this panel now where like Clark is running into the tear gas and Luther's like, Kent, that's tear gas, you moron.
You moron.
And then you just like you get these like tiny little hints of panels where he's more Superman than Clark in this, like the one where he's looking at the pipes with his heat vision and like his
Yeah.
hair kind of swooshes out more Superman-y for a
Mhm.
second. Like but for the most part, like it's Clark in this.
Yeah,
Which
and that
is
gets
super
into,
cool.
yeah, Frank Quitely just doing an awesome job of just Clark's posture is entirely
Yeah.
different. Like, it's the same guy, but he's like hunched over, so he doesn't have the physique of Superman when he's Clark. And
It
it's just
reminds
so
me
good.
of have I ever showed you because I think I've mentioned this to you before, but I don't know if I've shown it to you. There's like a quick little YouTube clip from the 70s Superman movie where Christopher Reeve's like doing the Clark
Yes,
hunch.
yes, yes,
Lois
yes.
leaves the room and then like he unhunches and then Lois comes back and he rehunches and it's just like amazing physical like acting via posture.
Mhm.
Like it's that but throughout the comic essentially.
Yeah,
All the Clark sequences are really great. Like I think Clark comes off really well in this, which is why you wrote in your notes that this is like Superman at his most Christ-like, and I hard disagree because this story is like very much about the fact that Superman wouldn't be who he is without like the Kents and being Clark.
yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. That's what makes him Christ-like.
All right, sell me on it.
Christ isn't God. Christ is the human embodiment of a God. What makes Christ Christ is that he was born of Mary and Joseph, and he lived amongst us. That's what makes Clark Clark, right?
I mean, sure, but like, does that? I don't know. Does the first part of that actually pay off, quote unquote, in the Bible, which is
first
a
part.
whole big discussion? The like, hey, he was born to human parents, so he's human thing. Like,
He's human. Like, he's the human.
like, but like, is he human? Like, in like fallible human?
I mean, he's God, so I don't know how we want to get into that.
I mean, like, so here's my thing: is because in my notes I had written like, I like that in this Superman is like he's tough, he's strong, he has his real superpower, which is Superman always does the right thing, but that doesn't mean that he's infallible. I guess like
Sure.
there's the bit in chapter 10 which is the like montage of different times throughout the day bit where he's going back and forth between like saving Lois, talking to Quintum, the Candor stuff is going on, like he's making life
That's
in
issue
Earth
10,
Q.
right?
Yeah, like there's that bit where he's talking to Leo Quintum and he's like, I can't believe I didn't think of this when Leo's like, hey, why don't we just put Candor on Mars and let them go, like
Sure.
let them do their thing. So like I appreciate that it's a Superman who has his superpower where he always does the right thing, because if you write a Superman that does something wrong, like you've probably messed it up. but he's also not infallible at the same time, because it's just like there are things he doesn't think of, or there are like maybe additional ways to solve the problem that Superman doesn't know, even with like all his powers.
Sure, but I mean, he's also a comic book character, and if a comic book character is omniscient, they become very boring to write for.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I guess my bit is that I don't know if I would put him as like, I think there's even a bit in issue 12 where it sort of mocks the like Christ-like bit where he's talking to Jor-El in that dream sequence. And Jor-El is like, they'll all join you in the sun one day, which is, I think, straight up a reference to one of the movies. I think it's, or maybe Man of Steel stole it from that. I don't know. There's like, but one of the movies is like, they'll join you in the sun, my child, and like that was like the most Christ-like movie.
There's a voiceover in Man of Steel where he's like, they'll look up to you. You'll be the, where he's like learning how to fly for the first time. But yeah, I mean, sure. But there again, he goes back to die for us. Know what I mean?
Yeah, but like, he's just gonna live in the sun. It'll be fine.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean,
It's
most
not,
people don't
like,
realize that. I like the parallels are there. Like Superman is a Christ analog. Like he is.
but at the same time, he's just a dude with glasses. I don't know. Like, I don't really like the Christ-like Superman, and like, I don't find him here. I guess if that makes sense. Although you're slowly convincing me a little bit, at least.
I mean, obviously, you have me in a position where I need to argue for like biblical studies that I am not prepared for.
No, I know. I'm asking you to expound upon things in the Bible, and we didn't read the Bible to prep for this.
Oh yeah, sorry about that.
It's been a bit since I read any Bible.
Yeah,
But no, I mean, like, I think your argument is there, but I don't know. As someone who like is actively dislikes the like, hey, it's Superman, he's like Christ, like this, like the simple version of that analog.
sure.
Like, I don't dislike this Superman, so I find it hard to reconcile those
I was about
two
to say,
things.
Superman's a more complex character than Christ, so
There, like he's in a lot more books.
yeah. I mean,
I think we got blasphemy on our first podcast episode, so that's pretty good.
it happened.
Overall.
We got that covered. It's not a 1-for-1, like obviously, but I think you can't deny that it's there. Like, I don't want to expound too much on it.
No, I think we covered a good chunk of it, and the
Sure.
listeners can take it from there.
Make up your
But, like,
own minds.
I don't know. It just.
I don't think the Christ-like comparison diminishes the story in any way.
I think it also is maybe because it's less of a saving us from evil sort of thing than more of like an inspiring us to do good thing, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. But I mean, I would say that the Bible is stories of Christ that we're supposed to copy. I don't know. See, again, I'm just not ready for this.
No, I was ready for that response actually, because it's kind of what I had forced you into. I think is like but Jesus also does inspire people to do good things, which I think is a valid take.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. And he's like given to a kindly couple who can't or haven't had children, and like he's from a super intelligent, super powerful race that give him to this lower like people. I don't know. It's there.
Yeah, it's there.
He is, quote unquote, a godlike being compared to normal humans.
All right, here's a question I didn't think we were going to ask on our first podcast
Let's
episode.
Let's do it. Can
you sum up Jesus Christ's origin in 8 words and 4 comic panels?
Oh, with the... This might get
you don't have to actually answer
heretical.
It's more of a hypothetical question. Because, like, this is based, like, the opening page is basically Into the Spider-Verse is like, hey, we're going to do this one more time, but, like, what?
It's a really good
14 years earlier?
Yeah.
I actually have the 2-page spread of Superman, like, flying beneath the sun as my desktop background right now. Like, I'm looking at it currently.
But yeah, the whole, like, Doom Planet... I just lost the page. Doom Planet, Desperate Scientists, Last Hope... kindly couple. It's all you need. It's like, what's his origin? There you go. 1 page.
Yeah.
Done.
Did it. To the point where when Kat read it, she was like, oh, this again. And then she turned the page and she was like, oh, that was refreshingly brief.
You know what I'm noticing right now? I don't know if you have it on yours, but on the reverse of the page next to it is both Superman Prime and Clark Kent from the future with his wrappings unwrapped.
Yeah, that's in mine too.
Was that in the like single issue, you think?
No, it wasn't. I know it
Okay.
wasn't because I have all the single issues at home.
Okay, because that's a huge spoiler now that I know that that's actually the same it's the same guy.
The same guy, yeah. But I think like for 90% of readers, you're not meant to know it's the same guy.
No, no, no. And like I said, it took me 3 times through and then looking it up on Google to figure it out. So
Yeah, like the only hint that you get that it is the same guy is, let me flip to that page quick. Like
he
when
says ha.
Superman asks which of my descendants are you, and he's like, ha, because the answer is none
None.
of them. I'm you,
I am
actually.
you from like 100,000 years from now.
But yeah, I bought all of these when they came out as single issues, which was apparently from like 2005 to 2008. And this is, I think, like started getting a little bit delayed as it came out towards the end, and no
Well, it's
one
Frank
cared.
Quitely, so
Well, like no one cared because they were like, well, first off, it's not in continuity, so there's no like nothing's waiting on this, right?
sure.
There's no like secret final infinite crisis invasion that's waiting for All Star Superman to wrap up. It's its own complete story, basically, and like each issue is mostly self-contained, like telling a larger story, but it's like episode 4, episode 5, basically. And like it was really good, so no one cared. Like people were like, "Oh yeah, All Stars out. I'll buy that this month,"
Sure.
as opposed to like being upset that it was late. And it is the best. It's the best All Star book of the two that came out.
Can't argue that. I have read some of All Star Batman and Robin, and other than that amazing Green Lantern scene, there's not much to say
There's
about
a
it.
way to read All Star Batman and Robin and enjoy it, but like I don't really want to put the
He
work
gives
in.
him a glass of lemonade. It's real good.
It is
It's
pretty
real
funny.
good. But yeah, that's the only part I like. To answer your original question, I personally can't sum it up, but I'm sure someone could. And it would
Yeah,
probably mirror that like Doom Planet could like doomed humanity.
like fallen rays.
Yeah, something.
I'm thinking about it now. Maybe I'll try to do it for the show now.
There you go. There
Just
you
go
go.
full blasphemy in the first one.
Let's do it.
So 5 is your favorite. 6 is your second favorite.
Yes.
Okay. I like that 6 can still be your second favorite without knowing any of the mechanics of any of the stuff that's like happening, quote unquote, behind the scenes.
See,
Which is
it's
pretty
interesting
sweet.
because I read your notes on it as well, and you say you would like 6 because of the Superman Squad stuff.
Yeah. You like it despite the Superman
Yes, I
stuff?
like it despite of that stuff. Like
I really love Cal Kent because like
I don't know who that guy
I,
is.
I
He's just
I read all the 90s JLA basically, like not when it was coming out, but pretty close. Like I was picking up the trade paperbacks.
Mhm.
And DC 1 Million, the crossover that Cal Kent, the future Superman, is from, is in that run basically. And like that crossover is so good. It's got Cal Kent, it's got the Batman of 85,000 years of the future, who like basically is the warden of Arkham Asylum on Pluto. Like
What the hell?
all of Pluto is now Arkham Asylum, essentially. Like it's got a lot of really good high concept stuff. And that guy actually just showed up in DC Comics again this year, which is pretty sweet. I think it might have technically been last year, but like there's a panel of Cal Kent in the most recent Justice League run, which is pretty cool. But I really like Cal Kent.
Sure. I mean,
That guy punches his way through 85,000 years worth of time. Like he punches through the time barrier.
yeah, okay.
So I'm into it, but at the same time, I could totally get the opposite reaction of like, I just want to read about a boy and his dog on the moon. Get this future Superman out of my face.
Like I think on from my perspective, they could do without all of that, like the Chronivore and all the other Supermen wouldn't be as like zany.
I mean, the stuff that's like the heart of that issue is the funeral stuff, right?
Right. And like it fits because like the whole Chronivore stealing 4 minutes so he misses Pa Kent when he needs his help and he isn't able to save him. But I think that could be done another way. The story is real good, regardless.
I think it's also about not just Superman's legacy, but like Pa Kent's legacy. Because there's that line that Clark gives in the eulogy that's like, he taught me how to be tough and how to be kind and how to. Oh, hang on just a second. I have it written down in my notes. I could flip to the page even. How to be tough and how to be kind and how to dream of a better world. Like, that's my perfect Superman to me. Like,
Sure.
and that doesn't start with Clark. It doesn't start with the powers. It doesn't start with Krypton. It starts with Pa Kent.
It's the ideals that his father taught him as a boy.
Yeah. So like getting to see that survives to like the year 85,273 or whatever it
Hmm.
is I think part of that story. Like I don't know if it's an essential part of that story, but I think it like I see how it fits.
Well, yeah, and it's Cal Kent is one thing, but they have the Superman from the Fifth Dimension,
Yeah, that I don't understand why Grant Morrison always has to throw fifth dimension stuff at everything.
Mister Klexelpluck or whatever his name is.
Mixes Pitlick, I believe, is the animated series pronunciation.
But I mean, it's a cute, and like I know of that character, so I recognize that like species that he was. So that was sort of fun. But yeah, I don't know. I'd rather it just be a human story of a boy whose father dies unexpectedly.
Yeah, which is fair. A human boy who throws trees into space and his dog catches them.
Yeah, which honestly, we talked about what our favorite like scenes are. Like the picture of Superboy and Crypto on the moon, like Superboy's staring up at the stars and Crypto's just staring at his boy.
Yeah,
It's so sweet.
that's for sure one of my favorite panels. Like I think that the full page like Lois kiss with on the moon, like there's lots of good moon bits in the story. And then oh, what else did I have on that one? I really like the Clark sequence at the end of issue 1, basically rain like from Clark getting into the Daily Planet to the end of the issue where he unhunches basically in front of Lois. Like I really like those sequences a lot. Frank Quitely draws the hell out of that.
Yeah, issue 6. It's the one that made me tear up. The scene where Superboy like is screaming, "Pa, I can't hear my pa's heartbeat. What happened? I can save him. I can save anyone." And like tears are streaming from his face because he knows that he's dead because he can't hear the heartbeat.
Yeah, because he can't hear the heartbeat.
And then the next few pages is him giving the eulogy at Pa Kent's funeral. It's oof,
And
oof.
like part of the other thing is like all those Supermen and Superwomen like come back in time to honor Pa Kent, which I think like
Yeah.
helps that beat of like, hey, that dude's dad just died, and like his descendants are coming back to comfort him.
Hmm.
Fits into that emotional arc of it too. So
Yeah, like the extra stuff fits, but personally, I think it detracts from it slightly.
yeah, no, that's a fair opinion, I think. Which can maybe lead us into talking about the bits that we don't like as much. I want to talk about I think
You
10
like
through
issue
the
10?
end.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I want to talk about 10 through the end maybe like as the last stuff we talk about. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. All right.
And then maybe let's talk about the stuff that sort of fits in around there cuz like issue 1 is good. It sets up the premise. There's the weird bit where Superman's face is really long like throughout a good chunk of that issue, and like the lighting is even different. Like I think the first 10 to 15 pages or whatever, like quietly still figuring it out. But by the end of it, when like the Clark sequences start happening, maybe it's the Clark sequences that help him figure it out. Cause like by the end of the issue, like Clark is Clark and Superman is Superman, and like he's not long and he doesn't look like Scott Summers looks in New
New
X-Men.
X-Men, yeah.
Like he's more squat, and like I was trying to figure out how to describe the art style, and just like there's so much mass in every panel, I guess. Like there's so much of like each character, and especially Superman in each panel. Like they just like fill the world with their presence sort of, I guess.
Sure.
But yeah, so like I think issue 1 is good. Issue 2 and 3 have Lois stuff, and Lois
Yeah.
does not come off the best in these stories,
No.
which I honestly didn't notice as much. Like I've kind of noticed it in the past, but like Kat read them and she was like, Lois is terrible in these. And I reread it after, and I was like, Lois is kind of terrible in these.
She's not great.
It's definitely not my favorite Lois.
No. I guess the argument could be made that she can't rectify Clark Kent being Superman. Like that would just break her worldview.
Which is a good bit, especially when you get into the fact that like he's spent so much time trying to like shake her off this trail.
Mm.
Like the bit where he's like, Batman, a robot. Like that's how he's like saved his secret identity in the past. I was like, yeah, 90% of the time it is Batman or a robot.
But I feel so bad for Clark when he's trying to confess his love and his identity to this woman who he has admired for so long, and she just won't She won't accept it.
I think it's like that's part of like maybe the most Silver Agey bit of this story is the fact that like Superman and Lois's relationship is just kind of there, and also they're kind of dicks to each other here and there. Like in that Superman has been lying to Lois for years,
Sure.
and as a result, like Lois doesn't believe him when he tells the truth. Like
He's been gaslighting her for
that's
so long.
that's some like super dickery right there, which is
Yeah.
an accepted industry term, by the way. We'll probably end up linking to the blog in the show notes.
Super
But
dickery?
have you ever seen it?
No.
There's at least a blog called superdickery.com, so that will probably help. But there's definitely like an established trope of like through the Silver Age, Superman's just like kind of a dick to his friends for no reason. Like he does it to Lois and he does it to Jimmy. Like he like teaches them lessons or like does these really convoluted ways of like getting them out of situations when he could have just done something much simpler, but like the story demanded it. And also like Superman's just kind of a dick in the Silver Age. Like those issues, the Lois issues, seem like they're sort of the most Silver Agey to me in that they call back to that stuff specifically, which I haven't even read that much of, but I know exists.
That's too funny.
But like, yeah, it's just like a fully established concept.
Yeah, so issue 2 is Lois being taken to the Fortress of Solitude. She gets super paranoid, and it turns out it's because she was exposed to some strange chemicals.
Those chemicals that Robot 7, who's been
Robot
compromised
7,
this entire
come
time.
on.
You can tell because he stutters when he talks.
That's never good. It's never good. But yeah, and like before that, Superman like these are all the deadly weapons that could kill me, and
like, oh, that won't come back to bite us.
No, it's fine.
But like my issue more so than like Lois being paranoid, which is also an issue, or like Lois being like unaccepting of the fact that Clark is Superman, is that she actually doesn't get to do that much. Also, like even in the issue where she's Superwoman, she like flies for a little bit, wears some jewelry, and then sits there. Like she doesn't get to do anything.
It starts off strong. It starts off with what is the guy's name? All I can think of is the Dinosaur, but that's his father, which is an amazing
Krull.
Krull, yes,
I think, yeah,
son of the Dinosaur. Which I don't know. Is that a thing for Superman? Is that a?
I don't think so. I've never heard of him. Like this is the issue where I think like people are most likely to be like, wow, this has a lot of references to things I don't know about, and I'm most likely to say, yeah, and I've never heard of any of this before. I just kind of rolled with it. Like, have Samson and Atlas showed up in Superman comics? I don't think so.
Really?
I don't think so. Hang on. Let me do some Googling. The first thing that comes up is All-Star Superman.
Huh. All right.
Okay. Action Comics number 320, potentially.
Yes.
All-Star Superman issue is based on Action Comics 320 and Jack Kirby's Atlas story and first issue special. So, like, they exist, but I didn't really know about them until I read this.
Okay, good. So it's just, like, really out there pulls that Morrison is making. I can live with that.
I think which is partially because, like, no other DC heroes are actually in this.
Right. Yeah.
Like, Batman gets name dropped a couple times.
My good friend Batman.
Batman? How's he doing? No, he's fine. You know Batman.
It's Batman.
He probably is not fine. He's Batman, actually.
Batman. He's brooding somewhere.
His entire life is not being fine.
But yeah, no, like, when she's Superwoman, it starts off with an invasion of lizard people. No, it starts off
really good, right? You're like, oh,
she's going to kick some lizard butt. But no.
And it's all taken care of already. It's already done.
2 random men have already finished that for her. Yeah, and then they want to compete to see who gets her. It's like,
Which does end up leading to, like, some specific moments I like, but I think overall, I would rather there be an issue like that where Lois gets to do stuff.
Well, like, even as Superwoman, she's put in peril. Like...
Right? Like, she's hovering between life or death.
Your gift is to be indestructible and super powerful. Oops, there's this Ultra Sphinx who's now, like, what?
I mean, but that's kind of what Superman comics do in a way, is like, yeah, there's this guy who's invulnerable and can't be hurt by anything, and also we're going to give him something that challenges him. Like, that's happens.
Fine, but just let Lois kick or punch someone before that happens.
Yeah, or like have Superman be the guy who gets grabbed by the Sphinx and Lois answers the
question. That would be
fun. Which I guess like doesn't let him do one of his 12 super labors or whatever. Which,
well, to be fair, the unanswerable question in the next 5 seconds is like the dumbest and least impressive of his 12 tasks.
I don't like she doesn't get to do anything, which
Yeah,
is not great.
she gets sphinxed and then she gets unsphinxed because an unmovable object meets
And she
an
also like puts
unstoppable
Superman
force.
in danger for like no reason. She's like, "Yeah, you'll figure a way out of it. You're Superman. That's my birthday." Just like, "Oh, you guys are being dicks to each other."
Well, I mean, to be fair, Superman has been this like godlike being, and I don't think
No,
she
I mean
can think
she's
that he
absolutely
wouldn't be.
right. She's correct. That doesn't mean she should do it.
Sure, yeah, and yeah, like they share a kiss on the moon.
I really like that page. The other bit of that issue that I like is when I think it's Atlas says like even the S on his cape is yellow, and Superman turns
Oh,
around and is like,
all
"Oh
right,
boy, you
okay.
done messed up now. Now we're done."
No one makes fun
Because
of my S. It means hope.
it doesn't mean hope though. Anyways, like throughout the entire run, I think Frank Quitely just nails like most of the facial expressions, and like that's one of my favorite. When Superman's just like, "Nope, we're done here. We're gonna
Okay,
do some arm wrestling now."
I'm gonna break both of your arms, and that's how it's gonna be. Yeah, I mean, it's a fun issue. It's just Lois does not come out looking the
No,
best.
and like the fact that Lois gets two issues back to back, and like the most agency she has in them is when she shoots Superman with a laser,
Yes.
is like kind of not fantastic overall. So like a little bit more of that good Lois investigative journalism content, which like Grant
Yeah.
Morrison has written that Lois, like that Lois exists in Grant Morrison stuff, and also exists in many other comics. So
It's the fact that he tries to propose to her and she like falls asleep before she can
she's
hear it. It's like, God, Clark cannot catch a break.
I mean, that's semi-perfect though. Like that's kind of how they're like. If you're not gonna actually marry them, which I don't think is the like quote unquote ideal Superman experience, like
Eh,
that's kind of perfect.
they could have been engaged. I would have been okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, like then you gotta start planning weddings and stuff, and like we only got 12 issues, man.
He doesn't need to replicate our universe. He could just not do that, and he can
He
have
does have
himself
to
a
replicate
wedding.
our universe. We'll talk about why. I don't know. There's stuff that's good in those issues, but overall, I think not the best Lois story. And like, so that's 2 and 3. 1 is basically set up.
hmm
4 is the Jimmy Olsen story.
Which is okay.
It's fine, right? Like, is overall fine. Like, it's a take on the like Jimmy Olsen transforms into things trope, and it's like, oh, what did Jimmy Olsen not transform into in the Silver Age? Well, Doomsday wasn't around, so we'll transform into Doomsday.
I think I actually prefer like Jimmy Olsen's fine. I have no attachment to that character whatsoever. I was more interested in the Leo Quintum character.
Yeah, who did, like is I think I'm 99.9% sure is original to this story, but you never know with
Sure.
these things. So let me just do a.
Well, there was this
Oh,
whole fan theory that Leo Quintum
it
is
just came
actually
up when I did the start.
Lex Luthor from the future come back to like do right by Superman, which is interesting. I don't quite see it all.
I don't really either, honestly.
Yeah,
I like that Google starts to autocomplete it when I type Leo Quintum, though.
Lex
Like I've
Luthor.
typed Leo Quintum and it says Leo Quintum is Lex Luthor.
There you go.
I'll have to read that because I never really got that. So if there's a good explanation, I'll read it.
What I read wasn't convincing, but maybe I was not reading the right place. But yeah, Leo Quintum is an interesting character, and like the stuff he's doing is zany, but it's not too zany. Like I can accept that there's this eccentric genius trillionaire who's doing crazy stuff for Project, whatever Project stands for.
It doesn't stand for anything apparently because we don't never get the description. Jimmy has more agency in his story than Lois has in hers. Actually, like Jimmy gets to
Yeah.
actually like throw some punches.
hmm
I don't know. I like Jimmy. There's a new Jimmy series apparently going to come out soon by Matt Fraction, who you might know from the Invincible Iron Man stuff you have, Pat.
Yes.
And like that's probably going to be good because Matt Fraction's really good. So I enjoy Jimmy stuff. Like it's really
It's a
weird
cute story.
man on the street sci-fi.
Yeah.
Getting to see Jimmy like like it's basically this story is Superman's greatest hits, right? And like there's a big
Mhm.
part of Superman that's like Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, so it would be kind of weird to not get a Jimmy story, but at the same
Yeah.
time it I don't know. Jimmy is like sort of ancillary. So I get that like it's fine.
It sort of feels like a filler issue, but I mean, It's fine.
Yeah,
You,
it
you
sets
get to
up
learn
the
about black
Bizarro
kryptonite.
stuff,
Yeah, which yeah,
which is good.
the underverse, under universe.
I think so. Okay, between the two lowest issues, the
Mm.
Jimmy issue, the Bizarro issues, and the Lilo and Barrel issues,
Uh-huh.
which of those is your least favorite? Because I think those are the weakest ones.
Bizarro, both
I
of
think
them
it might be mine too. I still can't even just read the Bizarro
can't
speech.
handle the Bizarro
I'll just
talk.
flip through those. Like I for this read through, I really just like hunkered down and I read it and I got through it. But
I
most of the time,
usually skip it. Yeah,
I
I
page
usually
through
just
it. Yeah.
like, oh, I can like, you can understand what's going on just by looking at Quitely's art. You
Yeah,
don't
you're
need
just
to
like,
read
oh,
it.
okay. Well, like you don't. I don't know if you have this experience when you read the Bizarro speech, but like when I read it, I'm like, I get the point of this. I don't need to like note every single word that's being said.
I have to say it out loud. Like I can't just read it to myself. I hate it. Like, and then there's that weird future speak they do too, which is also I don't like. But Bizarro is even worse.
So I like Zabaro, although I think he's
I
maybe
don't.
a little too emo.
I just he does like the weird conflict that they throw in the fact that the rocket is only designed for one person. It's just thrown in there and
Well,
nothing's
that
done
I
with it.
kind of actually do take issue with. Like I was talking earlier about, I like a Superman that's a little bit fallible and a little bit like can't
Yeah,
do everything, like everything, but like
Superman is
that seems like a
designing this
problem
rocket.
Superman could solve,
Yeah,
right?
like he just made the decision to leave Zabaro there and didn't tell him.
Well, to be fair, he thinks that Sabaro can't handle the stresses of the like getting thrown through gravity, essentially,
Hmm.
which is possibly true because Sabaro, I think, is more of just like a human than a Superman.
Can I? Okay, well, let's before we get too far.
Yeah,
Bizarro lore. There's a Bizarro version of everyone?
it depends, man. It's like there's been. This is one I don't even want to get into. Like, I don't think we'll link anything in the show notes because, like, there have been so many Bizarros and they're all completely different. Like, there's Alien Bizarro, there's Lex Luthor Groom in a lab Bizarro, there's this weird underverse Bizarro, there's
Yeah,
like
like when they invade Earth and like they attack that party, Amanda Waller or whoever that was gets attacked by
no, it's
one.
the Daily Planet reporter.
Okay. But she gets attacked and like it turns into her, but then she gets turned into one
Yeah,
too.
that's new to me. That I don't think has been out in anything outside of this.
They're like zombies in this, which I don't understand because they're also like now there are two Bizarros that look the same. I thought the whole thing was that there's a universe of opposite us.
Yeah, which is definitely a take on it, where there's just like a planet that's like Earth but a cube, and all of us live there except we're all
Which
dumb and backward.
yeah, which they play up. Oh god, like I don't like the Bizarro issues at all, and it's still my least favorite. But this one time, I don't know if I didn't notice before, but the introduction of the Bizarro JLA was hilarious. I didn't
Okay,
notice like the quips.
the best part of that for me is not even like the actual like Frank Quitely drawing stuff. It's the Grant Morrison bit where Batman was shot by his parents.
Shot by his parents, and then Bizarro Wonder Woman was born a baby and then turned into a
turned
statue.
into clay.
Beautiful.
Those are really funny.
It's
They
real
don't make
good.
the issue worth it, but they're
It's
really
for the people
good.
who know the origins of. It's so great. I laughed at that, and it's like, okay, maybe it was worth struggling through all this Bizarro
It
talk.
wasn't quite. Like they're funny, but if you were like, well, do you need to read them to keep reading the story? I'd be like, you can probably skip them actually, right? Like, and you can't really skip any of the other issues because like stuff that happens in those Lois issues comes back later, and like stuff that happens in the Jimmy issue even comes back later a little bit.
There's like a Bizarro Jor-El
Yeah, that's weird to me because like that dude's dead. Why is there a Bizarro Jor-El?
because he died in our universe, so he lived in that one.
He
Is
lived
what
in
they
this one,
said. But
when
then,
entire crypt. Yeah, that breaks down pretty fast. I think.
why is he on the Earth version of? Yeah, and what is the planet sentient? They keep talking about the planet
Apparently,
needed
it
to feed,
is.
and it like attacks from the underverse. It's weird. It's a very weird two-part thing, and I don't know if anything actually comes of it that's actually necessary for the plot. Other than
Zabaro writes some poetry.
maybe it's one of his like trials. I don't know. I don't know.
I think escaping the underverse is technically a trial. Yeah, I think that's one of the like 12 feats.
It's 2 issues. It just
Well,
seems
the first
a little
issue was
much.
more like Superman fights fights an alien invasion more than it is the Bizarro stuff.
I guess.
And like that first issue also has those good silent pages with when he says goodbye to the Sun Eater too, and I'm just like, no, my boy, the Sun Eater.
I'm sorry, I don't remember that. But I'm sure it was very
How
tear
dare you?
jerking.
It's got really good shadows on it too. It's also got that bit where Superman like X-rays Steve Lombard, and he's like, I don't know if
Oh,
I could.
performance enhancing drugs. I don't know.
I don't know if I could tell everyone to do that. Yeah, there's like 4 silent pages near the start of issue 7, and it's Superman saying goodbye to his good friend the Sun Eater, flying away, smiling, being like, "Oh, I hope that dude's gonna be happy and doesn't die in issue 12." And then he gets attacked by Bizarros, and there's that like I think it is one of like the only 2-page spreads in the book actually. Like there's the one where Superman's flying under the sun, and there's this one where Superman's being like carried towards Bizarro Earth.
The goodbye is fine, but like I don't understand what happens after that, so that's sort of why I just like
Yeah, that's definitely one of those Grant Morrison, like, I cut out the boring bits, but also the boring bits might have
Bizarros
explained what's
start
going
attacking
on.
him and throw him towards the cube world. I don't know what's going
Yeah.
on. And also, if it's coming out of the Underverse, does that mean it came out of like the project? Like it had to come over to
But
that
also then
hole,
appeared
right?
in space somehow. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Like, what's happening?
No, I think those are probably the weakest 2 issues, although the discussion we had about the lowest ones.
Those aren't great, but they have fun stuff in them that sort of redeems
Yeah, they've
it.
got Superman whistling and they don't have Bizarro speech. The Bizarro speech really is like,
It's painful.
man, you can keep trying, comics writers, but you're just never going to get it to work. Even the one bit that I like is when Superman finally understands how to use the Bizarro speech and they start booing him because that's how they cheer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cute, but it's too much for 2
Yeah, but you have to
issues.
do an entire issue of Bizarro speech to get the payoffs. So yeah, that's 7 and 8. You want to talk about the kind of like waste of an issue that is issue 9 also?
Yeah, it starts off interesting. He comes back from the Underverse and he finds out that he's been replaced by 2 other super people.
Yeah, Lilo and Barel.
Barel, yeah, which turns out they were Kryptonian scientists that were set adrift for decades and have finally made their way to Earth. And they're a little more racist than than our Superman.
It's a cool bit because it kind of shows like what a Superman that doesn't have the Kent's influence might be like.
Right.
Like he might not even be that good overall. And at the same time, it also gives Superman a look at like, oh hey, maybe Earth would be fine without me. And then as the issue goes on, he's like, oh god damn it, this is all going to shit. So there's a lot of interesting stuff in there, except it doesn't. I feel like the ending is rushed, and that's what ruins it. Honestly.
Yes, I agree. They asked like really big questions of Superman, which I don't think Grant Morrison was prepared to answer in that issue.
I
Like the
think he's
whole
prepared to answer them, but doesn't have enough space. Is what
maybe
happened.
because Lilo and Barel are asking Superman, "Why didn't you take control of this planet? You obviously could have. You could have like raised this place up. Instead, they're crawling around in the mud."
Which is honestly like a fair question.
Yeah, like he has the technology in the Fortress of Solitude to do everything that Lilo and Barel do.
And like I do think that kind of prompts some of his responses in issue 10 too, where he's like, okay, we're gonna figure out Kandor. Okay, we're gonna like let these miniature Kryptonians go to work on
Cure
Earth
some
diseases.
cancer. Yeah.
Like I think it does kind of force him like them coming and also the fact that like he's like that I think that almost makes him realize he's dying more than anything besides maybe Lex in issue 5, like forces him to like reconcile with some stuff in issue 10. So I think there is merit to issue 9, but I think the ending is super rushed.
Yeah, all of a sudden they went through some space dust that
Which is hinted at by the fact that Lilo's eyes have turned green.
is that what it is? Because I didn't like all of a sudden they're saying, "Oh, some minerals in your body have turned to kryptonite," which doesn't make any sense. But
I mean, it's comics, Pat. That's what I've got for you on that one.
I guess, but I thought kryptonite was radioactive chunks of krypton.
Yeah, so they passed through it on their way. I don't know.
So I guess we have iron in our bloodstream, and I guess that could. I don't know.
They passed through a certain radioactive cloud in space, which caused the minerals in their bodies to turn to toxic kryptonite.
But then he says that happened to me too, so that's why I was weakened. When did that happen to him?
No, the kryptonite was weakening him. Like the kryptonite in them is why they can actually like punch him and it matters because like he's been getting stronger throughout the whole story. So the fact that they can actually hurt him is like
Surprising.
kind of absurd.
Yeah. Okay, sure. But the quick turnaround. They're sick. They're dying. He has to save them, and he does that by transporting their brains, their consciousnesses into the Phantom Zone.
And that never actually like solves, like, it doesn't solve the argument they were having.
No, but before that, they're like, "We were wrong. You were right. You're the best of us." It's like, no, that's what? Like 5 minutes ago, you were cursing him. I don't understand. And it's done. And it's just like, okay, well, that was an issue.
Where like if they had kind of dropped like, hey, this kryptonite poisoning was sort of like tainting your minds also, maybe that's something, but like
Yeah,
that's not even
maybe.
really like, that's not even text, that's like maybe subtext if you
Or
read
maybe just
into
keep
it.
them racist. Keep them like they are still who they are.
Yeah,
But Superman can see past that and still wants, like, Burrell says, even everything I've done to you, you're still willing to help me. And then he like makes the switch himself. He doesn't have to. He could still be the jackass, but Superman would still save them.
yeah,
So I don't understand the turn for them.
yeah. It's, I don't know, it's like it's a it's a good issue with interesting ideas, but like characters that I don't really care about also,
Sure.
like they just kind of like Jor-El, or not Jor-El, Bar-El and Lilo, just like, well, that kind of, that slip kind of like betrays the issue
Well, the fact
of,
that Bar-El is the House of El, which means he's related to Kal-El.
it's sort of like when your parents drop by though at the same time, right? Like it kind of is that like,
You've got
hey,
a
I've been off at
racist
college,
uncle.
this is what I'm doing. Yeah, they're like, oh, you're not good enough. You haven't been doing anything right.
It's like, oh, shut up, you guys. Come on.
It has that panel where Superman goes from like his like cool collected Superman pose to his like chest all the way out Superman pose, which is like, there are so many different degrees of Clark to Superman to like, I think this is like the most like super heroic, quote unquote. I don't know. Like,
When Lilo and Burrell see them like pretending to be Clark, and they're just disgusted. It's like, what are you doing?
like, you've gone native, man. Oh, that also does have my like one of my favorite moments where he just sets fire to Steve Lombard's hairpiece, because like, which is one of the things where I'm like, he's not Christ-like. He gets pissed off and he sets fire to people's hair pieces. Christ would not do that. Christ would turn the other cheek. He would not use his heat vision for practical jokes.
There's a gap in the Bible from when Christ is born,
Where
and
that
then
is,
he's like
yeah.
18. So there's stuff that happens.
But like, I see the bits of it that like connect and make it work, and like I overall still like that issue, I think, but I think
I think it's okay, but they waste the potential. It's got a weird end.
it's super quick. It's just like kind of crammed in there before the end game, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, you want to talk about issue 10?
Yeah.
So, did you know that the Earth Q, which lives in the infinite universe of Q, is not only in this story?
It's not?
No, it's in other stories.
Is it outside Grant Morrison stories?
No.
Okay.
It's part of like the weird Grant Morrison 20-year meta story of DC.
Ah.
So like, he, I know what he's doing with it in this, and I really like it. But I get
It
how
is
it
our
would be,
universe, right? Like it's us.
I mean, yeah, because like on the second to last page of that issue, basically like Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster are creating
creates
Superman. Yeah, which is what happens in a world without Superman.
Well, they got
create him.
Nietzsche talking about the Superman.
The
too,
Superman.
earlier
Well,
on.
it's like basically following the history of Earth up to when those boys put pencil to paper in 1939.
Yeah. Which does that mean that universe is like time is going rapidly faster than
yeah,
the universe
for sure.
of okay.
Yeah, it's basically like throughout that one day that Superman's living, time is accelerated in that universe to the point where Earth goes from like humans just coming into existence to
Sure.
the 40s, I guess.
See, and it pulls into a whole other thing of Superman. When I think Superman, I don't think of like super intelligence, but that is one of the things he was granted, right? Like he has improved intelligence as well.
Yeah,
as...
it's a thing. At one point, Superman had all the things. Did you know super ventriloquism is a thing, Pat?
I think I did know that. Yeah. But like he creates our universe. Like we all owe our lives and existence to this Superman. Who,
to be fair, I think he finds that universe and then accelerates time in it and creates life.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay,
yeah, but whatever.
But it's in his lab, right?
Thing.
Like I don't. Okay, whatever. Anyway,
yeah, it's been in his lab
books.
since at least issue 2, because Lois sees it.
That's right. Comic books, man. They're
I really like issue 10. Issue 10's great.
I don't dislike issue 10. it gets weird with the giant robot and then the time capsule that was from the future that then tells him about Solaris coming to attack.
Pat, do you know what I think I just realized on this reread?
Huh.
That guy in the time capsule is like the great great grandson of Reagan, the person that Superman saves.
Real what? I tried to decipher the future speak so much that I
Well, that's
couldn't
the
do
thing.
it.
I think the future speak is what just like hides it for so long because like I said, I've read this 4 or 5 times
Yeah.
and I didn't catch it until this read, and it's like greatest grandmo at 21C, which is 21st century. Oh, life to you, and I think that's probably
Holy
Reagan.
crap. Sure, yeah, why not?
So like that weird like that one like simple act that he just does because he's Superman like gives him the time to prepare and actually like fight off Solaris.
I mean, that's a really good part. Is that in issue 10? The
Yeah.
Regan suicide
Yeah.
attempt?
Yeah, because like 4 pages later is when the time capsule is unlocked.
Yeah, I mean, that's really good. I would agree with that. And like the whole taking a bunch of cancer patients on a bus tour of the world, it was pretty cute in the beginning.
I really like Leo Quintum going into Kandor and solving it because
That's
that
also
to
really
me,
fun too. Yeah.
because a lot of this story is callbacky stuff in a
Mm.
way. Like it's all current and like you get it. And like I don't think, like I said, you don't have to have read anything before you read this to like read this story. But Leo Quintum going into Kandor and being like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do this. Like this is how the world's gonna survive post Superman," is pretty cool to me because it's like the part of the story where the story is pushing forward more.
Sure.
So that's pretty like I like for that.
There's a colony of Kryptonians on Mars, miniature Kryptonians.
Yep, and like 6 of them are flying around on Earth and they're curing cancer.
I do think it's funny that they talk about Brainiac. Like, Solaris is just a random thing that Grant Morrison pulls in. Of course, he's going to use it because it's his thing. But Brainiac is the one that I would think would make an appearance.
Yeah, like of the like not a lot of Superman villains actually show up in this. Like you get Jimmy Olsen as Doomsday, you get
Yeah.
Superman as Mixes Pitlick, but you don't
Mhm.
get like Metallo. Like even the guy in this issue, I would have sworn if you'd asked me before you reread it, the guy that like grabs Lois and Lois is like, "Don't ask."
Yeah.
I would have sworn that was Toyman, except it's not.
He has Alzheimer's. It's just a weird thing. I don't know. That was a weird part. And
Yeah.
it makes more sense. Like, I do like the whole, if that is Regan's great grandchild. I like that. That's a nice tie-in.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And like that page is probably actually the most iconic page of the issue. Like that page shows up on Reddit like once a year basically.
It's really good. There's also another Superman volume that deals with a woman who's going to commit suicide by jumping off a building, and Superman like waits with her. I don't know if you've read that or seen it, or
Yeah, there are a couple. Like and I
like
think
I don't know if this is the first one or
I think most of the rest of them happen after this one.
okay.
Like they're riffing on this.
Sure. Like this is just one page. Like you see the therapist begging Regan not to do it on her phone or his phone. I'm not sure, but that Regan like confrontation is like one page, and it's really powerful just because it is just one page.
Yeah. But even that bit also like kind of suffers from the Morrison hyper condensed problem of like if you don't read every single speech bubble on the page like the panel before, you don't understand where he came from and like how he got there to the point where when Kat was reading it she had to flip back basically.
Oh well, I mean, there's that like while he's saving the train or whatever it is, you see the therapist talking.
Yeah,
but like
I don't know, like
later on, like he does like Superman hearing, and he overhears the therapist again begging Regan not to do it.
yeah, which I think is maybe just Kat was flipping through issues pretty quick at that point because it was
Sure.
off of the
Towards
Bizarro
the
stuff.
end.
But it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I don't know. It feeds into that argument that I think you can make about this story that it still does have like the Grant Morrison hyper condensed what's going on sort of aspect to it once in a while.
Sure.
But the page by itself is so powerful that like who cares
Right.
at the same
right.
time. You're much stronger than you think you are, Pat. This is good comics. Did you know?
It is.
So like the other things I like about issue 10 are the fact that this sort of plays into a common Morrison thing, but like a world without Superman like basically creates Superman is
They
kind
create
of the
their
deal.
own Superman.
Yeah, like it's like if Superman doesn't exist, like
we'll
we'll
him.
make one. Yeah. Yeah, which comes back in
Which Quantum at the very end, yeah.
yeah, that and also like the new 52 Superman that Morrison's doing, like it comes back in that too. So that's cool. Which we'll get to the end where we're like, hey, what would you recommend as a follow up to this? Like the New 52 era Action Comics book that Morrison does is like pretty much directly a follow up to this. So
Oh, interesting.
I would recommend that.
So the Superman in that, it's not this Superman, right?
Yeah, it is.
Is it?
This is
Oh.
part of the whole deal. It's part of the whole deal, man.
Is it Superman Prime, or just is that Superman?
So like it's weird because it's the New 52, so it's like
I don't know what that is.
DC
Can you explain?
reboot. It's
Okay.
one of the like 7 DC crises basically, where
Okay.
like the Flash went back in time, tried to save his mom, couldn't, and then the universe got really wonky as a result of him fixing it.
I know about that, the Flashpoint thing.
So then, yeah, Flashpoint. So Superman wore jeans and construction boots for a while as a part of that.
All right, sure.
And that's a Grant Morrison book, basically, like the first 18 issues of that. But it's this Superman still, like,
Huh.
which doesn't quite work because like this Superman is not that.
In the sun.
It's close.
All right. All right.
So okay, all right. You raised the question, sort of. To me, All Star Superman exists like off in the weird future of Superman comics. Like whatever Superman comics are coming out now, All Star happens like 20 years after that, or like 5 years after that.
I'm fine with it not having any place in the continuity. Like, it can just be its own little story.
Yeah,
Like, I don't need it to have bearing on anything else. That's fine. It's just a good Superman story.
there was something that I think it was like Bruce Timm said about Batman Beyond, where it like always happens 15 years from now. Like that's what I feel about All Star. Basically, like it happens.
It's always in
5
the
years
future.
from now, or like 10 years from now. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, but yeah. Issue 10's pretty good.
Yeah, I would agree.
They make Superman. Clark gets to publish his headline. Like, oh, the fact that like Superman is dying, but like makes time for Clark shows how important the Clark Kent identity is to him. Like, it's not just
Absolutely.
like a mask, essentially.
Yeah, doesn't he? Yeah, and he gives the genetic code to Quintum to create.
Yeah, which like there were a lot of theories like when it was coming out that Quintum was like some sort of secret traitor or something. And I think like Grant Morrison sort of directly addresses those with the like, yeah, I think I'm a better judge of character than that when they're standing on Mars.
For sure. And like we'll get it like the very last, I don't know, is the very last I remember, but the whole Quintum looking back and there's a giant Superman colored door with a 2 on it.
Yeah,
for
like
the,
Project
the
2.
S,
Yeah, that's the last page, yeah.
which part of my like looking up the continuity, there's a Superman Secundus that happens eventually.
Yeah, which that's some like weird Grant Morrison stuff that I honestly don't even remember, but like I know
Right.
that it's a thing now that you say it.
So like if there is going to be a Superman with a 2 instead of an S, Superman Secundus would be the one, right?
Yeah.
And I think like Superman Secundus is the first of the like Superman, what, it's not hierarchy, I don't remember what it is, but like the dynasty.
Yeah, like the descendants basically
Yeah,
that
yeah.
lead to Cal Kent eventually.
So like the whole thing, like Quintum like kicks off that dynasty,
Yeah.
which is like, again, if you're in the know, it's sort of cool, but if you're not, it's just
It also kind of feeds into, and this is a thing I got from the like Mark Waid's introduction to Volume 2, and I didn't pick it up before that. Like the fact that when Lois talks to the unknown Superman from 4500 AD, she thinks like, "Oh God, we had like terrible children." Like the actual answer is that they didn't have children.
Doesn't he ask her who J-Lo is?
Yeah, he does.
Like, okay.
Yeah, all right. That's a joke.
It's a weird place for it, Grant. What are you doing?
Yeah, it's sometimes like I don't know. There's also he does that thing. I think you mentioned it where he's like, "Oh, that villain has Alzheimer's." Like
Like,
you don't
why?
really have to
It's not a
blame it
thing.
on a mental disease.
Come on.
Grant.
Yeah, and just, yeah, it goes back to the carnivore is cool, I guess. The Ultra Sphinx is a thing, but like,
Yeah.
could be more simple than that. Whatever.
All right, so let's get into the end game,
Yeah.
which is basically boss fight into boss fight.
Yes. So Solaris, the Tyrant Son, which we've heard rumor of, he's here.
And Superman just kind of deals with it, honestly.
Yeah, and it's like, well, I'm prepared for you, so this is not a thing.
Yeah, like does end up losing
All his
everyone's
robots.
favorite character, the Sun Eater.
Oh yeah, and the Sun.
No one cares about the robots. Maybe Robot 7.
Robot 7 sacrificed
Forgive
himself
7.
because he was guilty.
The Sun Eater, though, like
I'm interested that
That
you
was
have
a
such an emotional connection to this thing.
he's just trying to. He comes back because Superman helped him. Which is
Sure.
like part of the theme of this too. Is like all of Superman's good deeds throughout, like inspire people to help him out.
Step
like,
up. Yeah.
Like Jimmy's like, okay, he saved me a million times. I'm gonna try this doomsday virus out, I guess. Like the Sun Eater comes back. like the great great grandson of Reagan is like, hey, I like
I owe
risk
you.
getting
Yeah.
like sent to prison to send you this time capsule. Solaris is coming.
Yeah, no, I see it, and that definitely is a thing.
This does also have the panel that I stole from my comics blog where Superman's saying there's always a way and about to put on his
Where
new
he's taking
super
his
white
shirt
costume.
off? Yeah,
Yeah.
like
I don't know. Like, so I was thinking about that today because I was like, thinking about, oh, okay, we're talking about All Star Superman for the first one. Why did we choose All Star Superman? And it's like, because it's one of the most positive comics there is. And like, that's one of the reasons I made the comics blog in the first place is like, I want to have an outlet where I can write about things that I like and that are good and that like generally spur positive discussion and are fun.
I guess.
You guess. I don't know about you, Pat, but sometimes the internet's a little bit of a downer to
No,
me.
I mean I agree. Like, yes, but I think you can have constructive conversations about not happy things. Like, it
Oh
doesn't
yeah,
have to always be bright.
but it's just like that's one of the reasons I think would rather choose this comic for our first episode than like
For
something
sure.
else.
Yeah.
It's because like this is what comic books give me sometimes. Sometimes I'm depressed on Saturday morning and I want to read All Star Superman.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Solaris shows up. Superman punches him. Lex has got superpowers.
Yeah, which he stole the formula from
Robot
Superman.
7?
Robot 7, how could you? And he gets to be super. And by standing in Superman's shoes, he sees what Superman has seen and that everything is connected.
You're glossing over the fact that Superman's trying to spend his last minutes getting Clark to be able to publish a headline. Also,
I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, like, I don't know. That's super cool to me that, like, between fighting the Tyrant Sun and, like, taking on superpowered Lex Luthor, he really wants to make time to publish the goddamn last headline of his life.
Well, no, doesn't he collapse on his computer before
Yeah,
Lex
he
shows up?
passes out on top of it, basically.
Yeah. And then, yeah, Lex shows up and says Clark is the least of your problems.
Yeah, but then, like, Clark is actually the most of his problems.
Yeah, little does he know. And then he's got a gravity gun. Bam! Because he understands that gravity warps time and he only has 24 hours. But relativistically, it's less than that now. Ha ha ha.
Which is good comics. That's
Yeah.
good comic sci-fi bullshit.
It's not even sci-fi bullshit. It's like it's good. It's good sci-fi bullshit.
And you get, like, so we've had Clark pretending to not be Superman. We've had, like, Superman saying, hey, I'm Clark throughout this. And then we finally get, like, Clark saying, hey, I'm Superman, basically.
Yes.
Like, we get all of the possible variations, basically, throughout the 12 issues.
But yeah, Lex's like final realization that like, oh my god, this is how he sees things every day. Like it's all just us in here together, and we're all we've got.
Yeah, I've used that one on the blog, too. That's another good one.
Yeah, him realizing that Superman is Superman because he's Superman.
Like, that's Superman does good things and eventually they come around is basically like the theme of Superman in this story. And like even in this one, like it gets Lex, which I think is the ultimate Superman story. The one where like Lex gets transformed by Superman into being a quote unquote, if not good, at least like he gets the point.
Which is like their tie into the whole he's Leo Quintum, but I don't think it's quite there. But
yeah, I don't see it either. I honestly hadn't even thought of it till you brought it up as a thing that could
I didn't think about it until I
exist.
did my research. So, internet wackos, what are you gonna
Why are you doing it, internet?
do? Did you know that there's an animated version of this story?
I did. I've never seen it though.
Yeah, I like saw some YouTube clips. It's weird because they try to mimic Quitely's art, and it doesn't.
It's not really animatable, I don't think, honestly. And I think that's partially down to what I said before of like there's so much like substance to it. Like it'd be hard to move all of it, I guess, is sort of what I would.
Yeah, they went for a more of like Superman the animated series kind of thing.
Yeah, which makes sense given the people that do those movies and also the fact that like I just don't think there's a great way to animate a Quitely art.
Their ending, I'm pretty sure, ends with Lex being the one that combines the DNA. I'm pretty sure. I might be misremembering that.
That honestly is sort of a better ending.
Like Lex is the one that creates another Superman because he realizes.
I kind of like that ending actually. Now that you say that, because like that, like closes the circle on the fact that like Superman inspires everyone to do good, even Lex.
Yeah, because this one ends with the realization that he gets punched out, and Superman's like, you know what? You could have saved the world if you really wanted to, Lex, but you didn't.
Which is still a good panel. You also then get the like Lois Superman. Oh,
Oh, your poor face. That's just a weird
I
line.
love you, Superman.
Oh, your face. It's got some glowing
I'll be
cracks
here
in
when
it.
you get back from the sun.
I'll wait for you. How long will it take to fix this? Oh, 100,000 years. Oh, no.
85,000 years.
Lois Lane, she waited.
You do get that really good Superman in the Sun splash page, though, where he's like
Oh, like the
the
Renaissance
working man
version?
thing. Yeah,
Yeah. It's a fun, thing.
it's cool. It's a good one. I'm looking at these last pages where like Quintum's about to initiate Project 2, and like I now can't help but think of like how much better it would be if Lex was involved.
Yeah. Like that was the one part that people were saying that the movie got right, that the comic did not.
I do like that Lex is like brain beats Brawn every time in issue 5, and at
And
the
then
end, like,
Superman comes
Superman
back
beats
at
him with brain.
You're right, Lex.
Just hiding behind that safe. I'm looking at the panel on like page 143 in volume 2 where he's just like, oh my god, I hope this works. And he's hiding behind that
Oh please, oh
bloodline
please, oh please.
safe.
Yeah.
Oh, Quietly does just like nail the facial expressions, and the colors are super good in this too.
No, the coloring is really great.
Like, it's a world where Superman's primary colors like stand out but don't like not fit at the same time. Like,
Hmm.
Superman fits, but it also like stands out on the page, which I think is hard to do sometimes.
Well, coming from the horribly bleak Superman movies we've had, this is just a breath of fresh air.
Dude, I just want a Superman that knows what the right thing is and does it. That's what I want. And this is him.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to snap any necks. He doesn't have to get in like big old city destroying fist fights where like people are dying. Like, I don't need that grimdark stuff. I need a Superman that like inspires people to do good and then is also rewarded for doing so. All right. So you have final thoughts before we talk about like, I guess, kind of stuff that we'd maybe recommend people jump off to as a part of this? Because I think we'd both recommend it to people overall.
Yes. Yes.
Even though I think there is an argument to be made for the like it's too busy in spots.
I think if you're on board for wanting to read a Superman comic, you'll be good with it.
Well, you have said like you haven't really read any other Superman comics, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you like, as a result of rereading this, if I was like, Pat, here's some Superman comics you should read, would you read them?
Sure.
Okay. Is that a qualified sure?
Well, I mean, Superman has never been my favorite superhero, and it's probably because of the way that I've seen him written in other comics or other media, where he is just like he has all the superpowers and he can do all the things, and like that's a really boring character. And I'm just like
You just have to be able to
broad-stroking it.
challenge him, right? Like, that's the thing. It's like it's not that hard, but like it is. I get it at the same time of like you need to challenge him in a way where he can still be Superman, and then you've got a good Superman story,
Hmm.
which is what happens here.
I mean, yes, I like the research I did, like showed me that there's other things that happen with Superman. Yeah, I'd be open to doing more Superman.
So if I was going to recommend you a Superman story as a
Let's
result of
do.
this,
Yes.
I would give you that new 52 run that Grant Morrison does on Action Comics. I think it's Action Comics. Let's look it up quick so I don't.
And
so I
that's
don't
that
biff it
is
for
a
the reason.
Superman comic. It's not like a JLA. It is actually
No, it's Action Comics. The first volume is called Superman and the Men of Steel.
okay.
It's got the big old new 52 like announcement on the front, like because it basically after Flashpoint they rebooted everything. They did a bunch of TV ads. Like this is even Action Comics got set back to like issue 1, which is a big deal because Action Comics is run like consecutively since the 30s, I guess.
Oh dang.
So like they did finally put it back to the right, like the quote unquote right numbers when they did Action Comics 1000. But so basically, like the new 52 Action Comics #1 Grant Morrison story, it has really weird parts, but like a lot of it's really good. So I don't know. I don't know if I would straight recommend it. I would recommend it if you're okay with the busy stuff in this, I think.
Sure. I mean, for me as a Grant Morrison fan, I think I could probably handle it.
Okay.
If someone else were to read this as their first Superman, would you still recommend 52 to them?
I think I might kick them back to the Morrison JLA stuff first.
Okay.
because that's a little bit more straightforward, especially like the first story arc, New World Order, is
Hmm.
like the JLA versus Martians essentially, which I kind of spoiled some of the plot by saying that, but like it's relatively straightforward, yeah. And like Batman gets some cool scenes in that too, but Superman also gets some good moments, so I think that would be a good start. And that also starts you on the track towards figuring out who the hell Cal Kent is. If you're into that. And then actually probably like the least like the most accessible thing, maybe this is like it's a tie with Morrison's JLA, is like the current Action Comics run by Brian Michael Bendis is really good, and it's got really good
Mm,
Clark stuff in it. So if you're like, I like Clark as a result of this, which is what my wife has said basically, like she read issue 5 and she was like, I don't really like Superman, I like Clark though. That the current Action Comics run is pretty good. It's got good Clark stuff in it.
nice.
Yeah. So what would you recommend, Pat, if you were like, hey, I read this and I liked it?
I like you point out, I can't really do Superman recommendations because other than some JLA stuff, I don't know much about him. There's a big Superman shaped hole in my comic knowledge. But otherwise, if you're into more Morrison Quietly, I would love to say go ahead and read some new X-Men, but that might be a bridge too far for most.
So having recently reread the first arc because we thought we might do that for this episode before
Hmm.
we decided All Star was a better choice, like I think the first arc you can get into, although there is like weird stuff again, like it's again there's weird stuff that you don't have to know, but if you do know it, it's better. Like I don't know if you even knew this, Pat, like Cyclops was possessed by Apocalypse for a bit in the 90s. I think it was late 90s or early 2000s. And that kind of informs his actions throughout New X-Men.
See, I didn't even know that. It's still one of my favorites.
Yeah, I know. So like I think you could still get into it.
Yeah, I don't know, but it does get weird. So
It also isn't quietly all the way through too.
true, Quietly does. Yeah, it's true. He does a few of the issues, but yeah, it jumps around on artists. But it's Grant Morrison all the way, even 500 years in the future. Uh, but if you're not up for jumping into the Marvel X-Men universe, which I can't blame you.
It's a tough sell sometimes. Yeah.
But no, if you liked this, I can full-heartedly give my recommendation to We Three because I think you would like that equally as much if you liked this series.
Okay, so here's a question I've got for you because I was
Mhm.
thinking about it as I was reading this. Is All-Star Superman the best Frank Quitely book?
I would say We Three is the best Frank Quitely book.
Oh, see, I can't disagree with you because it's been quite a while since I read We Three. I was thinking about it versus like their Batman and Robin run, which I would not recommend you just jump into as a result of reading this, although
Sure.
it's really good. Um, like I really like that run, but I think this is probably better Quietly stuff.
There's so like We Three. Just to give us, I gave a little synopsis of its Homeward Bound with RoboCop mixed in. It's three animals, a dog, a rabbit, and a cat that have been given cyborg enhancements, and they're like military experiments, but they break away to try to like find their homes. And because they're animals, they are like intelligent. They do have like some phrases they say to each other, but mostly it's told through Quietly's art. And he does such a good job of telling that story. It's really fantastic. And it's like, I don't know, less than 40 pages long. It's really good.
I do remember it being basically like weaponized emotions, especially near the end.
Yes. No, it's heavy. So like if you're not ready to tear up, maybe don't do it, but still it's worth it if you liked All-Star Superman, if you liked Morrison Quietly, give it a go.
All right, so I think that ends our discussion of All Star Superman. Check back next month when we'll be talking about the book Seconds by Brian Lee O'Malley with my wife Kat as special guest host. Thanks for listening.
Thanks guys.